Welcome to Business Notes. I'm your host, Diane Bogino, President of Performance Strategies and Diane Bogino Development. Our guest today is Dennis Buttimer. Dennis is the owner of Atlanta Center for Mindfulness and Wellbeing. He's an executive coach, professional speaker, TEDx speaker, corporate trainer, and author. Dennis received his master's in 1981 and has been in various capacities of the helping profession ever since. He has also survived being the oldest of 10 children. Dennis Buttimer, thank you so much for being on the show today. I've been looking forward to this.
Well, it's a pleasure being on here, Diane. I appreciate you asking me.
Now, Dennis, we're kind of both in the head business, if you will,
Indeed.
but I want to ask you about these 10 siblings of yours. Did the fact that you had 10 siblings play any role in your career choice?
It played a huge impact on my career choosing, Diane. First of all, I always told my parents they had 9 kids too many. Like, now y'all know how this is happening, right? Hello? I'll be a little light, but yeah, really. Like, Diane, have you ever been in a room or a house with 10 kids? And it was often like that. Well, it was like that every day. So yeah, it was pretty big. The noise, the want for peace and quiet. It actually did drive me, first of all, into mindfulness, but it drove me into the helping profession because you see, I was always trying to corral these cats, if you would, in various ways. And sometimes I was successful and often I was not.
I can imagine.
Right. Exactly.
Yes. But Dennis, what is mindfulness and what are some of its benefits?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, mindfulness, first of all, is fairly simple to actually identify. Mindfulness is simply being in the present moment, practicing acceptance and non-judgment about what's happening. So you say, well, okay, it's present moment awareness. I'm being in the now. Right, like you and I are talking, we're here now, aren't we? But the catch is the human mind often goes to the past, and it's doing this as a reference point constantly, that past performance, and then it's gauging it relative to forward movement, the future. And so it's really a great practice to be able to understand that the point of power is always in the present moment. Although in your business, I know you found this, Diane, that people so often are stuck in the past. They're referencing that. They're stuck there and they feel this, that, or the other about it, or they're fearful. They may be planning into the future, but they're not actually present in a conversation, in their work and in other ways.
Yeah, right, exactly. So what are some of the challenges that people have with mindfulness?
Well, I think the number one thing that I hear from people is, my mind is so crazy. I sure can't be still and just focus for, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is, to do this practice. And it's an important part of it that you meditate, but of course there's a lot of other extensions from that. And so people will often say, my mind, when I close my mind, it jumps all over the place. And I always let people know, well, that's actually what it's supposed to do to a certain extent. Like from an evolutionary standpoint, the mind is trying to make sure that everything's okay. So you might be meditating, for example, and the mind goes to, do I have gas in my car? Or it might go to, why did that person mistreat me in the 5th grade? Or it might be, gosh, next week I don't have time to meditate. I've got to do this. And suddenly the dishes in the sink are beckoning for you to come clean them because you're sitting still, right? So all of this sort of material comes up and it can be challenging. And people, I think most people that endeavor to do this really give it an honest shot. But then they get sidetracked, if you will, because, as soon as the mind starts jumping in and they lose their concentration, the human tendency is to say, well, forget it. So they'll often say, well, I like to run for my meditation. And you can certainly run mindfully, that's for sure. Or I like to to do these other things. Now, those components are important, but it also is important to get the mind to stop and for our body to just flat out stop and be still. Does that make sense?
Well, I know how difficult it is because
Right.
I have tried, and I have to say I haven't been successful at it, but I would imagine that having a coach like you would make a big, big difference in somebody trying to do that,
Well,
accomplish it. Yeah.
thank you. Hopefully.
So, Dennis, how does mindfulness play into mindful performance?
Well, that's a very good question. And so, so often in business and in life, we're looking at improving performance in particular ways. So let's just keep it at work and business for now. And so, we're shooting for peak performance, improving the way that we do things at work. And there's expectations in organizations, of course, from higher ups that you need to earn your pay. You need to do what you're supposed to do. But then you've probably heard all the studies. So often employees they're caught up in, what's going on the news, or they're on their cell phone, or there's these other things going on with them. So the mind is, of course, easily distracted. And distractions can lead to a lot of problems on the job and elsewhere. People get really stressed out. And so they go to these sort of comfort things, comfort behaviors or habits, if you will. And it takes them out of where they're supposed to be focused, which is in the task at hand, right? So people, I think most will tell you, I want to do a decent job. I'm getting paid. I want to carry this out, or I have this contract. I want to do it well. But the part of the trick is staying in the present moment and not getting dissuaded by the stressors, by the distractions. And here's something, by the unexpected things. Like you and I, Diane, we were probably pretty decently organized, right? And we have our day sort of set in our mind, but we also have to allow for some flexibility and thereby some patience when the unexpected happens. And so when we're getting into mindful performance, it's really being truly present and accepting things as they're flowing to you and trying not to judge them as they're going on, and stay focused and being able to concentrate. And that's why, Diane, that the meditation helps, because you see in meditation, you are concentrating. You're concentrating on something as simple as your breath, maybe using a mantra, a word or a sound that you repeat to yourself to focus. By doing that, you begin to train the mind to really act in a more healthy, productive way, which then goes into your work. You're just more likely to be more focused and in the moment, and thereby, do a better job.
It's an interesting thing you said about not judging things as they come into your mind.
Right.
I suspect that takes a lot of practice.
It really does, Diane, because like in traditional mindfulness, judgment, and we have to be discerning. So I want to differentiate here. We need to be discerning of things, but judgment is sort of what's called the sword of the ego. So the ego is based on fear. And so, am I up, down? Do I need to go left, right? Fear of missing out. This bad thing might happen. So you get stuck in these, as human beings, we get stuck in these patterns of judging things, good, bad, right, wrong, up, down, and all of these things. And it ends up that we go back and forth, sort of like a tennis game or a ping pong ball going back and forth. Well, sometimes more like a, what were the pinball machines?
Right.
We're like the ball in there, bing, 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 all over the place, right?
Right.
So yeah, it's about really cultivating concentration and trying to soften your judgment, softening the non-acceptance. Like, this thing is happening right now. I don't like it. I don't really care for it, but I've got to cope with this in the here and now, because that's the only place that you can actually cope with it is right then.
Right, right. So another interesting point you made is the FOMO, fear of missing out. And I listened to a podcast about a week ago where they said that CEOs actually have a big fear of that, and that creates a lot of chaos. So I'd like for you to address how an executive can build a better team through mindfulness, if you would.
It's so interesting with that question, Diane, because it turns out that studies show that leaders who themselves practice mindfulness, that is, they have, a successful mindfulness practice of some type. And in fact, the most successful leaders in the world, according to studies, show that they have a morning ritual that's very positive. Often that involves elements of meditation and stillness to start their day. So as they start out, they're working on themselves first, and from there everything else is going to flow out. So as an example, if they're short with their employees, oh my gosh, we've got these deadlines, we need to kick some butt and get this done, and they bring a whole bunch of stress to that. Of course, we're all energetic beings, so the employees feel that, and they get equally upset. Now, no one really gets that productive by being upset and stressed out. And like, you never hear anybody say, it's really funny, you never hear anybody say, Diane, I need my life to be more hectic, I need it to be more stressful, right? Of course not. What do we want? We want more peace and calm and all of these things. But you see, we fall into habits. And so those leaders, if they can cultivate that one, I would say, number one, if they can practice what they want to preach, okay? They have to be mindful in their performance first. And then secondly, as they can bring in elements of, be it, mindfulness programs or other things that address the stress levels of employees. I've worked with companies that, they've decided that they're going to have a quiet time, twice a day for 15 minutes. And then they're asking everybody move away from everything, be still. They want them to meditate, but there's a lot of creative things that can go from it. But I think it has to start with the leader or leaders.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I agree with you totally. That's a great answer too, and a great way to start the day. I'll have to work on that one. Okay.
I'll help you, Diane. I'll help
Okay,
you.
great.
Absolutely.
So, Dennis, do you think mindfulness has any relevance in the big topics of today? We have a few of them out there.
We have a few, and I work with so many groups and organizations about this topic, and of course individual clients that we have what I call the big three: the pandemic, the politics, which is ongoing, and race relations. Okay, social unrest. Let's just sort of say, like, those are the three topics. Now, those things already. Already in place are these personal things that people are struggling with. So they may be struggling with health matters, job or career, maybe struggling with particular relationships. Those are big enough. But then when you layer on these other things that, let's be really frank, that the big issues that we're facing today, although there's been some struggles with them over the years, it was really unexpected, let's say in just January of this year, that so much stuff would be inundated to face and deal with. And so there's such an element of fear to it. Now, remember, fear is forward movement. So it's the sort of, like, if I could be blunt, like the oh my gods and the what ifs and the lions, tigers, and bears, oh my, of the future, right? I might say. By the way, thank you, Diane, that you knew what I was talking about when I said that. Sometimes if I say that to younger people, they're like, lion, tigers, and bears. But anyway, we get caught up in that. And of course, we're trying to survive, and we're nervous and we're scared, and all these impending forces that are out of our control. What can we do? Well, you can go sit right here. You can breathe. You can focus on this. When you're in a conversation, you can be in that conversation, not plotting your next 12 things that you're going to do. I mean, it's very human. It's very human, but it actually can trap us, can it? If you think about it, right?
Right.
So I think it's very relevant to to these times. Well, I would even say, Diane, more now than ever.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you totally. Yeah, it's you got so much going on outside your life and the things inside your life as well. So, now, Dennis, well, tell us a little bit about your journey, how you went from a
Sure.
government employee and making that decision to make the leap after being in the corporate world after that.
Absolutely. Well, going back to where we started, Diane, I always was, yeah, I think inherently a helper, sort of a healer type person. I was always caught up in that, and from my own training growing up, I yearned to do that. So, I mean, I went into when I was really, really young, like when I was in high school, I worked in a nursing home as like a assistant and orderly. And shortly after that, I became an EMT for a while. And so I was drawn to or things that would rescue or help others. And then I've got my master's, did some clinical work for hospitals with all kinds of psychiatric, drug addiction, all kind of issues like that. And then I was like, okay, well, what would be a nice blend in business would be going into, part of business, part of helping professions. So employee assistance programming, EAP, seemed to be a good match. I did it a really, really long time. And then, of course, I had that yearning, like all human beings do, to expand and recreate and stretch out. And so, actually, in early 2002, my wife Angela and I, we went into business together. And yes, Diane, she is in charge. She was in charge, is in charge, and will be in charge.
And
I'm
don't
being
you
a little,
ever forget it.
I'm being a little late, but not at the same time, right? But Angela, she's great,
She's a
great.
sweetheart,
She
yes.
is. She really is a sweetheart. And I don't have any trust. She says not to say this, but I believe it. I did marry up. You see, I did marry up. But nevertheless, we went into business, and so I used a lot of counseling, coaching skills for these sort of things, and then began working more and more in other organizations, taking these sort of notions into them and helping them sort of customize their workplace.
Right. Well, so what advice would you give someone trying to start their own business, either in coaching or counseling? Now, you're not a counselor, but Angela is. Is
Right.
that correct?
Right. We both have masters in counseling, but mine has primarily been coaching.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What advice would you give somebody in starting their own business with that?
Well, this will go against the grain of someone who is already by nature a helper, and so I'm pointing at myself, not pointing at other people. But and that is, you have to ask for help, right? So you think about, well, no, I'm the helper. I've been trained, and in fact, when I was in graduate school, great skills learning that I took on, and really grateful for it. But honestly, the whole time I was there, I was like, yeah. But anyway, let's show me how to do this and let's go do it, right? And so along the way, when you go into business, you can't do it all by yourself. No man is an island, right?
Mm.
And we tried hard at the beginning, Diane. We tried to be the accountant. We tried to be the marketing person. We tried to be, the website designer. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty, to be honest, right? You have to ask for help. You have to. Uh, it's not minimizing anything about you and your talents. It's only saying that you don't have all the talents, and so you have to look for resources, and moreover, accept help from those resources. That would be like number one to me. Yeah. And then I would say, followed by, you have to keep managing your own stress level. I mean, it is just a profound the stress that you're under in the world, yes, but when you're in business, it's like, oh, right, there's not a W-2 check coming in. I've got to make it happen. We've got to make it happen, right?
That's
So that
right.
pressure, yeah. So that pressure, you've got to take care of yourself. Number one, we talk about in mindfulness that the old analogy about, look, if you're on a plane, the safety instructions say you've got to put that oxygen mask on yourself before you start helping other people, because even if you're good-hearted, well, I need to help this elderly, infirm person or whatever. Well, that's fine, but you won't last if you don't take the oxygen first. So have to be willing to do that.
That's exactly right. That's a big coaching issue with a lot of clients, is taking care of themselves first. Yeah. So Dennis, where should someone begin in terms of starting to be more mindful?
Well, I would say, learning a little bit more, and gosh, there's innumerable, and I mean innumerable resources online, even YouTube, or coaches like myself or other people, mindfulness teachers, who can help you learn more about that can actually sit down and teach you the how-tos of it. But I would say, short of that, just beginning to notice, like as an observer, where your mind goes and how quickly it vacillates. I mean, we're talking about in microseconds, it splits to here, there, and everywhere. And you're like, well, why am I, like, you start off here and you went there and then you went way out here. I would say calmly and from a non-judgment standpoint, starting to catch your mind. One analogy has been used, like Wayne Dyer used to use this analogy. He said, well, when you're meditating, you want to be a little bit like a cat waiting on the mouse to come out of the mouse hole, and which reminds me of Tom and Jerry, which of course dates me yet again. But being able to do that so that you're just being, you don't want to be hyper aroused, but you do want to be vigilant. You want to be like aware, like where am I right now? And you can simply check in where you are throughout the day. Now, a lot of people will try. And they're sincere generally, or ardently try. I'm going to sit here and be really, really quiet, right? But the mind's really tricky, really tricky. So I had a guy some years ago. So he comes to coaching and he's like, yeah. I don't have trouble controlling my thoughts. I have trouble with the employees that he's working with. And I said, oh, okay. I said, well, I want you to do me a favor. Could you just close your eyes for a second and try not to think about a banana? And he closed his eyes and he opened his eyes. He smiled, point made. Like, the mind's so tricky. Like you and I have been talking, Diane, and so that means that I spoke. And if I told you something funny, that would be a joke. And the sound that a frog makes is a croak. And the white of an egg is a
Yolk.
right. But it actually isn't a yolk if we think about the white of an egg, right? White of an egg. It's tricky. And see, that's the thing. It's like da 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 da.
Right.
Following the pattern. I had a lady in a training I was doing, Diane, and I said I did that, and she said, "Oh," a young lady raised her hand. "Oh, you just got me to jump on your thought train." I was like, I really like the way you said. I'm going to use it. Can I use that? But yeah, like, you jump on this thought train. Okay, here's another quick one. All right, so Mary's mother has 4 kids: April, May, June, and
July.
You probably want to say July, right? Following the pattern. But let's start with the very first word, Mary. Mary's mother. So April, May, June, and
Mary.
Right?
You got me, Dennis. You got me twice.
No, I'm sorry, Diane. I know it's early too, and it's Monday, and all of these things.
It's not good to embarrass the host on her own show, Dennis. I want you to keep that in mind.
It doesn't seem fair, does it? Absolutely. Look, I've done that to so many office audiences, and I had a guy one time on the egg thing, an executive out in the audience, and he stood up. He stood up and he yells, "Egg!" or "Yolk!" And everybody started looking at him, and then he thought about it, and I was looking at him, and I just kind of did my eyes up. And then he sat down and he goes, "Oh, I said, actually, the answer is albumin, but okay, no, that was a good try. But it's tricky. It's so tricky how the mind is. So I'm using those examples to say, like, you got to be careful of your initial thinking. You know well in your work that you can clients can follow assumptions, build an assumption based on something that actually has no relevance. It's certainly not true, but they run with it and tell all these storylines to themselves, and then lo and behold, they're like way far away from the actual truth, and that impedes them.
Right. I imagine that's how a lot of chaos gets started in work teams and in
Yes,
workplaces and yeah.
that's right, Diane. And it turns out that leaders and who will be mindful, and they'll bring mindfulness or its components into the workplace. They have higher performing, more collaborative teams because it's a release of tension, and it's more of not so much us versus them, but us together. We're working on something together. So I'm certain you've probably seen all that yourself.
Right. Yeah. So Dennis, I know that you've given some good tips on how to be more mindful, but if someone would like to work with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Well, probably the easiest way is just visit my website, pathtobestself.com, like walking on a path, pathtobestself.com. And yeah, they just can email me, same address, dennis@pathtobestself.com. And, we can connect. And, there's different ways to do all of this, Diane. It's like one size does not fit all. You'll never guess why. Because not all human beings are the same, right? So you have to customize things, okay? But if a person wants to reach out, even if despite the fact that they've maybe tried to meditate and all before, as we say, today is a new day. It's a new opportunity. Oh, it's a new moment to shift and learn something that can help you feel your best and perform at your best.
Great advice. Dennis, once again, thank you so much for being on the show. And I wish you and Angela all the best.
Well, my pleasure. And thank you, Diane, for having me, and all the best to you for sure, too. It's great to be on here with you. You have a great laugh, too, by the way.
Thank you. I'll see if I can sell that.
I'm with you.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you for watching Business Notes. We've been speaking with Dennis Buttimer, owner of Atlanta Center for Mindfulness and Wellbeing. I'm your host, Diane Bogino, bringing you business ideas you can bank on.